John McCain talked bad about Russia, yet Paul Manafort operated pro-Russian uh, influence operations out of John McCain's office. That's not me making something up. That's been written in numerous 2008, 2009 articles. That's just, that's been pretty well established. So let me go on here because I actually have a couple things that I want to put in. We're going to go a little bit over here tonight, but maybe not too much.
Sellout who decided to cash in by offering his considerable intelligence services to the highest bidder. There have certainly been plenty of examples in the past of highly placed government intelligence officials launching new careers as shameless lobbyists for unsavory regimes abroad, so it wasn't that hard for many people to assume this is what Flynn was doing. Brian's assumption is quite different from the popular narrative of Flynn the mercenary sellout. As he noted in an earlier column, he suspects the Flynn Intel Group was created as part of a counterintelligence sting to identify and target people engaging in illegal lobbying to influence American foreign policy.
Think about that, folks, right? I mean, that is an interesting perspective. It's all speculation, it's all guessing games, I get it, but if these guys are Chinese intelligence, they're probably going to have better intelligence than our intelligence has. And think about what I just said there, and that's actually probably true when it comes to us. Because I don't have a lot of trust in our intelligence, but I sure as hell you can't trust what the Chinese are saying, but I'm as confused as everyone else. We'll let her go on.
So what would be the purpose of a counterintelligence sting targeting people looking to do illegal lobbying to influence US foreign policy? The reality is you can't really put America first until you shut down the vast illegal industry in Washington that disguises itself as lobbying.
It's called the military-industrial complex, folks. It's the relationship between the government and the military-industrial complex, right? And it's like they just migrate from one to the other. When I say they, I'm referring to politicians, officers, and huge, monstrous government contracts, and then the military-industrial complex. They all migrate around with each other. And just like, I play in the opening of the video with Eisenhower warning us about that, right? So, I will continue.
The Clintons, with their apparent pay-for-play deals, are merely symptomatic of the entire DC lobbying and bribery culture. American foreign and even domestic policy has been for sale to the highest bidder for a long time. So can you handle the brutal truth? A lot of the people spending big money in Washington to shape US foreign policy are not Americans. You're not really going to succeed in getting US lawmakers and news media outlets to put America first until you cut off that massive pipeline of foreign cash that both have been getting from their foreign paymasters. Many lawmakers...
Are you listening to what she's saying here? American journalists are being bought and paid for by foreign governments and foreign contractors and foreign contracts through foreign influence operations. Are you hearing what she's saying?
Because in Washington and news media outlets sold out America to foreign interests long ago. These people needed Hillary to win that 2016 election to keep the machinery humming along smoothly. Just from listening to Trump speaking on the campaign trail, the people involved in the massive pay-for-play industry in both the federal government and the news media knew he'd cause massive problems for them if he somehow managed to win that election. China, Iran, Russia, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and many other countries either have their governments or factions within their country paying a whole lot of money to our lawmakers and our mainstream media to help write US foreign and even domestic policy. Those on the receiving end of this vast pipeline of foreign money here in America, both in our government and in our media, are desperate to cover up what they've been doing, which is selling out the rest of us to their foreign clients and keep the money coming from their foreign...
I worked for Obama's national security advisor for 8 years. We were making hundreds of thousands. I made hundreds. I made $240,000 on a contract in 1 year. I did good work, but that's a whole nother story. It's ridiculous. But we're making hundreds of thousands of dollars on these contracts while he's Obama's national security advisor. So some of these people don't even hide it. Some of these people, at least I could argue Flynn potentially, although I don't know anything before this, at least Flynn potentially waited until he got out of office before opening a company that is a foreign lobbying firm, right? General Jones, as a NATO Supreme Allied Commander, even going back to all the way to 2001 when his family business began, basically doing defense contracts, military contracts. So, how is this healthy? It's exactly what she's talking about. I don't know what involvement Flynn's is. She has an interesting perspective, or the guy who did that article. Maybe he's just doing this as a sting.
And paymasters. It's important to pay attention to the fact that Mueller's investigation led to the prosecution of two prominent people for illegal foreign lobbying and then trying to hide their gains through bank and tax fraud. The charges against Paul Manafort and Rick Gates show exactly how serious these crimes are.
Okay, guys. So, this guy, I think both of the Potestas are well connected to General Jones. Let's just be flat out. You can easily look that up. I think Tony was on a board of directors with General Jones with at least one company, maybe more. These guys, politics aren't an issue with them. It's profit. It's all about that bigger wine cellar. They just mentioned Davis and Manafort. Let me throw something in here real quick. Here is this and this. Okay, so this is what you're looking at right here is the 3 EDC strategic partners list from March 4th, 2007. This is from Google's way back. You can do it yourself. Just put in 3edc.com or .net. This is listed under 3DEDC as a strategic partner. Number one strategic partner is Dynology Corporation. All right. So let's go back to something else here. Bear with me actually one moment. Look at this. And then let me do this here. I'm sort of taxing my computer memory right now, but let's pull this up. Alright, so here, let me bring the screen back up there. My mouse double clicks every time. Okay, so here we have the Federal Election Commission, right? Oh, you're not seeing this. Let me transfer over. Remember that 3EDC Dynology Corporation. I work for Dynology. Here you have John McCain's Federal Election Commission disbursements. Okay. Now remember, I was building the shadow net at this time. Social media psychological warfare, built by some of the most genius minds in our military, that was completely capable of influencing the outcome of a presidential election. And in fact, we made it commercially available, and that was one of the product mindsets we had when we were looking at business opportunities in the States. That's out of scope from what my job was. Once you do these things, I'm working on development of these applications and stuff. I have no idea what these people are doing, but at the same time, as you can see, Dynology, let me point there, at the same time as you can see Dynology, actually if I point like right down there, right, they were Paul Manafort's number one preferred partner. This is the disbursements by payee. So right at the very top, this is from 2/26/2008. At the very top, 3EDC LLC. We remember that. That's Paul Manafort's company, right? 3EDC LLC. Paul Manafort's company, Dynology's number one preferred partner. 3EDC was paid by John McCain $339,000, right? $149,932.59. You know, we're north of $500,000 between the two. Dynology was John McCain's IT company, IT services provider through the primary. I don't know what we did. I was in Iraq during most of that time. During the when it went into the presidential election, the RNC brought Rance Priebus in. I'm not sure about Rance Priebus, right? The RNC brought their top people in. We need to find that out if that was Rance Priebus. And then the RNC people brought Manafort and pushed Dynology out and brought Manafort in. That's interesting, right? So this shows that what I'm talking about, we were directly involved in all of this. So we got Manafort, Dynology. It's interesting that we're both getting paid by McCain, right? And what we're both accused. I have a flyer that you guys have, and that flyer literally shows the ShadowNet and what it's capable of. It's the same thing we indicted 13 Russians for. If this isn't enough evidence in your face, I mean, if you think I'm making something this up, just Google it yourself. You know, save yourself trouble trying to be a Twitter troll or something. This is all so easily verifiable. But at any rate, let's go back to this nice lady. There we are at the Epoch Times. Come on. Yeah, this is really taxing my memory out here. If you had any, if you folks had any idea what I was accomplishing on so little,
Former Washington
so
power
little memory,
player
you wouldn't
Tony
believe it.
Podesta may literally
like,
be
wow.
the first person to have figured out where all this is heading.
Oh, wow.
Recall what Podesta did immediately following the unsealing of Manafort's indictment. Upon reading the Manafort indictment, Podesta dissolved his successful lobbying firm, dove into the deepest
Wonder how
hole he
long
could
it'll be
find,
till
and still
Jones
hasn't
Group
stuck his head out of
International is
that
dissolved.
hole. Since Podesta did that, you've had the Mueller investigation demonstrate just how bad it is to violate the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Meanwhile, it's been in the public sphere for months that the only investigation Flynn is cooperating with that we know about thus far is related to what? Illegal lobbying in violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act. What else do we know? Well, media reports have suggested U.S. Attorney John Huber of Utah has been investigating the Clinton Foundation, a probe that includes massive donations from many foreign countries. While the DNC media complex and the Democrats in Washington might have thought the Mueller investigation was just about bringing down Trump, Brian believes they were allowed to think that, and in many cases they were fed deliberate disinformation so they'd go on thinking that. In fact, the Mueller investigation, wittingly or not, was long ago turned to the purpose of setting up what Trump is going to do now, which is to shut down the massive foreign bribery industry from which much of the Washington establishment reaps great profits. And Brian believes he'll win this fight also. That's all we have for this edition of Declassified. I do hope you've enjoyed it. What are your thoughts on DC's foreign bribery industry?
There we go. And I just started her up again, I bet. Huge delay, huge memory issues. But nonetheless, we were successful with that. So let me close everything out here tonight. Gonna switch over here. I believe I showed you guys some interesting things. Go back to the verify it for yourself, right? So how do you explain the same people like Manafort, right? Manafort's company and Dynology, which is General James Jones's, Obama's national security advisor's company, were both paid over 300 and over 150,000 respectively for their services by McCain. So McCain's campaign paid, according to the election commission, McCain's campaign paid Obama's national security advisor, an influence operations specialist, paid his company to manage his IT security. John McCain. And then you have to look back at this, but there was a big security breach. I believe it was China at the time, and that security breach happened after technology was out of the picture and 3EDC moved in and took over, and Obama's campaign was also hit. Who has IT level connections to both Obama's campaign and John McCain's campaign? General James Jones. He's the man that just makes everybody happy. Kind of interesting, isn't it, folks? Hope you enjoyed tonight's show. Thank you for tuning in. I think we're going to set it up so Jay calls in tomorrow to do a Skype. He has sort of promised to do this fully clothed. We're going to keep our fingers crossed. Thank you very much for joining. I'm going to leave y'all with the intro. I got to make an exit one. Thank you very much, folks. Have a great evening. Pass this around, share it, like, subscribe. We got an Indiegogo. We got an Indiegogo thing that we're trying to raise money, right? We need to get Jay a microphone. We need to get more memory. So if you can help, please do that. Go to victimoftheswamp.com and please look for me on Ann's show. I think that went really well, and I think you'll enjoy it. Have a great evening, and again, thank you very much.
Guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society.
Well, I don't know, man. Yeah, I don't get that, man. They go through all this trouble to get here and then come here and vote Democrat.
The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals.